Welcome back for another deep dive. I think you're going to find this one particularly interesting. You've been exploring early Islamic history,
Right.
and your sources kept mentioning this guy, Abdullah ibn Jahsh.
Oh, yeah.
And you might not know a lot about him,
Yeah.
but his story, it's like intertwined with some of the most important moments in the Prophet Muhammad's life.
Definitely.
It really is like getting a behind-the-scenes look
Uh-huh.
at the challenges and the victories of that whole era.
What's really fascinating to me is how closely connected Abdullah ibn Jahsh was to the Prophet.
Yeah.
Not just through, like, the events they were both part of,
Right.
but through family.
Okay, yeah. Let's talk about those family ties because they are super interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a whole web of connections
Yeah?
to all these key figures. Like
Yeah.
his sister
Zainab bin Jahsh.
became a wife of the Prophet.
Exactly.
And then you have Abdullah's brother, Ubaidullah,
Right.
who is married to Habiba, who was also a wife of the Prophet,
Right in the thick of it.
right in the heart of that early Muslim community.
It's also worth pointing out that another brother, Ubaidullah, had actually already become a monotheist,
Oh, wow.
even before the Prophet started preaching Islam.
So this was a family that was really open to, exploring different ideas.
Yeah.
So given all that, what about Abdullah's own conversion? How did that happen?
Well, it's a great example of how important mentors were in early Islam.
Oh,
Abdullah actually converted through Abu Bakr,
mm.
one of the Prophet's closest companions.
Yeah.
And Abu Bakr had this reputation, for being very gentle and persuasive.
Mm.
And he brought a lot of really important people into Islam.
Wow. So Abu Bakr was really influential during that time.
Very much so.
And speaking of being influential, Abdullah's dedication to Islam is really clear in the fact that he went on that second migration to Abyssinia,
Oh, absolutely.
which is modern-day Ethiopia.
Right.
This wasn't just a casual trip. I mean,
Yeah.
he left everything behind
Yeah.
to be able to practice his faith freely.
This migration really shows you just how bad the persecution was in Mecca. I mean, they were desperate for refuge, a place where they could,
Yeah.
practice their beliefs without being afraid.
Yeah.
And Abdullah was willing to go to a new land, face the unknown.
Right.
That says a lot about his dedication.
That's true. Okay, so now there's also this really interesting story
Okay.
from Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas,
Uh-huh.
who was another prominent companion of the Prophet,
Yeah.
about Abdullah being the first emir in Islam.
Oh, right.
And that term can mean a couple of different things.
Yeah, Amir can be like a leader or commander.
Okay.
And, the official title of Amir al-Mu'minin,
Right.
which means commander of the faithful,
Right.
that later became associated with the caliphs, like Umar ibn Khattab.
Right.
But this story about Abdullah,
Yeah.
it really highlights his early leadership.
So even before, like, the formal structures of the caliphate, there was already this sense of leadership emerging within the early Muslim community.
Yeah.
So what does Sa'd actually say about Abdullah's leadership?
Well, he said that the Prophet specifically chose Abdullah
Like
to
that.
lead this small group on a raid.
Okay.
And he praised Abdullah's patience and strength.
Hmm.
And their mission was to intercept Meccan caravans
Okay.
that were carrying goods that had been taken from the Muslims.
So it was about reclaiming what rightfully belonged to them,
Exactly.
which leads us to the Nakhla raid.
Yes.
Kind of a pivotal moment in Abdullah's story,
Big time.
but also a complicated one.
Yeah, it was meant to be strategic, to weaken the Meccans economically
Right.
and get back what had been stolen from the Muslims,
Right.
but it didn't quite go as planned.
It seems like things went wrong in a way that caused a lot of problems.
Yeah.
What actually happened during the raid?
Well, Abdullah's group ended up attacking the Meccans during the sacred month of Rajab.
And for those of us who aren't super familiar with the lunar calendar, what's the big deal about Rajab?
Okay, so Rajab is one of the 4 sacred months in Islam.
Mm.
And during these months, any kind of fighting is totally forbidden.
Oh, wow.
It was a time for peace and pilgrimage.
Hmm.
Even, long-standing tribal conflicts were put aside.
So attacking during Rajab was a huge offense,
It was.
even if you consider the reason behind the raid.
All right.
So how did the Prophet and the early Muslims react?
Well, the Prophet initially disapproved.
Yeah.
And of course, the Meccans, they jumped all over this,
Of course.
using it to mock the Muslims and accuse them of hypocrisy.
Oh, I bet.
It created a really tough situation for them.
It sounds like a PR nightmare.
Yeah, it kind of was.
So how did the Muslims respond to those accusations?
Well, this is where the story gets really interesting.
Okay.
Allah revealed a verse in the Quran specifically about this.
Wow. Okay, so this verse is important for understanding how it all got resolved.
Exactly.
What did it say?
It basically absolved Abdullah and the Muslims and put the blame back on the Meccans.
Okay.
It pointed out all the things they'd done wrong
Oh, yeah.
and how they were being hypocrites.
Why?
You know, they were violating the very principles that they were using to criticize the Muslims.
So it was a turning point.
Yeah, it cleared things up
Yeah.
and justified what the Muslims had done.
I bet Abdullah and everyone else involved were relieved.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was a big win for them.
Yeah, a clear sign that they were on the right path.
Yeah, it shows how divine guidance really played a part in early Islam,
It does.
helping them navigate all those complexities.
Definitely.
Okay, so this incident really shows the challenges they faced.
Uh-huh.
And now we come to the Battle of Uhud,
Yes.
where Abdullah's story takes a very personal and honestly really moving turn.
Uhud shows us not just Abdullah's bravery,
Yeah.
but how deep his faith really was.
Right.
He wasn't just fighting for some cause.
Yeah.
He was trying to connect with Allah.
Right, and this is where that story from Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas comes in. They were both crying right before the battle.
Yeah.
And Abdullah says this incredibly moving dua,
Powerful stuff.
asking Allah for a strong opponent and to die as a martyr.
Uh-huh.
And Sa'd even said that Abdullah's prayer was more profound than his own.
He was really struck by Abdullah's sincerity and how focused he was on pleasing Allah. It wasn't about personal gain or glory. It was pure surrender to something bigger than himself.
So what did Abdullah actually say in his prayer?
He said, "O Allah, grant me a strong opponent whom I can kill or be killed by, and let me achieve martyrdom in your path. And if I meet you tomorrow and you ask me why I'm mutilated, I will say, for your sake and for the sake of your messenger. And I know you will say, you have spoken the truth."
Wow, those words are so powerful.
I know.
Abdullah was ready to sacrifice everything for his faith.
His prayer shows a level of faith that goes beyond anything worldly.
Yeah.
He's not afraid of death.
Yeah.
He embraces it.
Yeah.
If it means fulfilling his purpose and pleasing Allah.
It makes you think about your own beliefs.
It does.
And what you'd be willing to sacrifice for.
It really does.
Yeah, it really makes you think. Sadly, Abdullah's prayer foreshadowed what happened to him at the Battle of Uhud.
You're right. He fought so bravely.
Yeah.
Until he was killed by Al-Aqnas ibn Sharik.
Hmm.
This guy was a fierce opponent of the Prophet,
Yeah.
known for being ruthless.
I mean, from what I've read, his death was really gruesome.
It was.
He was badly mutilated.
Yeah. And that was pretty common in ancient warfare back then.
Yeah.
You know, mutilating your enemies after they died.
Right.
It was often driven by rage, this need for revenge.
Yeah.
Or maybe to try to demoralize the other side.
Right, to break their spirits.
Exactly. In this case, it really shows how intense the emotions were in this conflict
Yeah.
between the Muslims and their enemies.
And the Prophet was deeply affected when he found Abdullah's body.
Oh, absolutely.
It reminds you that,
Yeah.
behind all these historical accounts,
Mm-hmm.
there were real people with families and loved ones.
Their losses were felt deeply.
Yeah.
Not just like strategic setbacks or whatever,
Right.
but as personal tragedies.
And the Prophet's grief over Abdullah's death shows how strong those bonds were
Yeah.
within the early Muslim community.
Those bonds of brotherhood.
It's really moving. And then there's this one detail that I find especially poignant.
Okay.
Abdullah was buried in the same grave as Hamza,
Oh, wow.
who was, of course, the Prophet's uncle.
Right.
And they were both uncles of Abdullah.
Right. One by blood and one through marriage to the Prophet's aunt.
It's a beautiful gesture.
It really
It
is.
shows that deep connection between them
Yeah, that unity, that brotherhood.
that defined the early Muslim community.
They went through so much together, and those shared experiences created such strong bonds.
Like even in death, they were united.
Yeah.
So as we look at Abdullah ibn Jahsh's life and his legacy, what are some of the key things we can learn from him?
Well, his story might not be as well known as some of his contemporaries.
Yeah, but it gives us valuable insights into those early days of Islam.
Go.
First and foremost, he's an example of the power of faith and unwavering commitment.
Right.
He faced persecution, migrated to another country,
Yeah.
and ultimately gave his life for what he believed in.
He definitely walked the walk.
He did.
But it wasn't just blind faith. I
Right.
mean, he was clearly a thoughtful person,
Yeah.
a sincere person.
Yeah.
You see it in that dua before Uhud.
Right.
This deep understanding of his faith,
Yeah.
this genuine desire to connect with Allah.
That's something that resonates with people,
Yeah.
no matter what their religious background is.
His story also gives us a glimpse into how complex early Islamic history really was.
Oh, for sure.
It wasn't all victories and triumphs.
Yeah.
There were setbacks, mistakes, difficult decisions.
The Nakhla raid is a perfect example.
Yeah.
It shows that even people who are deeply devoted
Yeah.
can make bad judgments.
Right.
And those judgments can have consequences.
It reminds us that this wasn't a black and white period.
Uh-huh.
There were nuances,
Yeah.
things to think about.
Yeah.
But it also shows how important it is to learn from mistakes, ask for forgiveness, try to do better.
And even with the controversy surrounding Nakhla,
Yeah.
Abdullah was still chosen to be a leader.
Right.
Clearly, he was respected.
It says a lot about his character and the trust people had in him.
It's not just about giving orders.
Right.
It's about inspiring others,
Exactly.
earning their respect,
Yeah.
guiding them through tough times.
With compassion and understanding.
His willingness to put himself out there, both during Nakhla and at Uhud,
Yeah.
shows real courage.
And selflessness.
Abdullah ibn Jahsh's life is like this powerful example of sacrifice.
In the face of adversity.
He understood that real commitment
Uh-huh.
often means putting your own interests aside.
For something bigger.
It makes you think about your own life.
It does.
What are you passionate about?
Yeah.
What would you sacrifice for?
What are your values?
These are big questions.
They are.
And Abdullah's life can inspire us as we try to answer them.
I think so.
And it's amazing to think that his story is just one part of this huge tapestry
Yeah.
of early Islamic history.
Yeah.
There are so many others whose lives could teach us so much
Absolutely.
about this transformative period, and makes you realize how much more there is to learn.
Oh, yeah.
So many stories that haven't been told yet.
Each story adds something new to our understanding of this time.
Yeah, and it just shows how rich and complex it really was.
It does.
This deep dive into Abdullah ibn Jahsh's life has been really eye-opening.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a whole new perspective.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
How someone who's not that well known can teach us so much.
Right.
It shows that even those who weren't always in the spotlight
Right.
played a big role in how Islam developed.
It's a good reminder that we need to look beyond the surface,
Yeah.
explore the lives of people who might not be famous,
Oh.
but who still made a difference.
History is full of those hidden gems.
Yeah, just waiting to be discovered.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Abdullah ibn Jahsh, is there anything else you'd like to leave our listener with?
I think Abdullah's prayer before Uhud is worth thinking about.
Yeah.
Remember what he said?
Yeah?
He asked for a worthy opponent and a chance to die as a martyr.
He was ready to give up everything for his faith.
It makes you wonder,
Yeah.
what would we sacrifice for?
Hmm.
What cause or belief would inspire that kind of commitment in us?
Those are some really powerful questions.
They are.
I hope our listeners will think about that.
I hope so.
This has been an incredible journey,
It has.
exploring Abdullah ibn Jahsh's life.
Thank you for guiding us through it.
My pleasure.
And to our listener, I encourage you to keep exploring.
Yeah.
There's so much out there to discover.
That's right. Thank you for joining us for another deep dive.